What is up, guys? Today we are going to talk about a rig that we've been mentioning a lot in our videos and we've been getting a lot of questions about it. And this is the rig named the Biwa Rig. Now this is a rigging that has gained a ton of popularity in Japan. I know what you're thinking, it's a ball head swim bait, right? So this is a very small little tweak take on that rigging. We're going to break it down, talk about why it's becoming so effective and so popular over there, and show you guys exactly what you need to do if you want to implement it into your arsenal. So if you'd like to join us, let's do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Deps, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. What is up, my friends? I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined by my buddy Jeffrey the King. We're the Hookup Tackle USA. What's up, Jeffrey the King?
What's up?
So today we're going to talk about a technique that you and I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it a lot just because it's kind of a really fun, interesting topic, and it's a really interesting technique that is super popular right now because it's such an old school technique, but little tweaks are happening and brands are making little tweaks to their own baits to fit this rig for certain purposes, and it's a pretty interesting time to bring it to light, I would say. And there's a lot of game for this rig here in the US, even though it'll be under different applications, right? But this is something that, I mean, dude, you and I have probably had a dozen conversations over this and why it's developed. And so we thought it'd be a fun thing to do, to come today and just kind of have that same conversation with you guys, so you guys understand what it is we're talking about when we mention a Biwa rig in our videos, right? So here essentially is what we're talking about. The Biwa rig is nothing more than a ball head and a small little plastic bait. Now traditionally it is some type of paddle tail bait, but we're going to get into baits here in a second that are becoming very popular and talk about the differences, and the same with heads, and we'll break this all down for you. Now, why is this gaining popularity, and what is different about this than what we've all been doing for years and years and years, right? Well, in Japan, if you guys follow any Japanese anglers, in the wintertime, the smelt, or what we call wakasagi, they will migrate into the shallows to spawn. And these small little bait fish will go super, super shallow, and they will migrate at night. And these giant bass will go up into the shallows, I mean, inches or very few feet of water, like super, super shallow, right? And they will just gorge on these migrations of wakasagi. And one of the most effective ways to fish them is with what has been nicknamed the Biwa rig, and it's basically a very, very light jig head, and we're talking 16th ounce, 32nd ounce, really, really tiny, very light ball heads, and a small plastic that would imitate a wakasagi. And it's just allowing anglers to present a small little bait that they can fish very slowly through that shallow water without snagging, without dragging, without spooking those bigger fish. Now, here in the US, we have found that this technique can be incredibly successful on open water bait fish feeders as well. So even though it was designed in Japan for being more, big fish pushing shallow, we use the technique out here a lot for like open water schoolies, fish that are crashing bait when they're really, really specific on the size of the bait. It's a very effective technique, right? Anything I missed there, Jeff?
That was it.
Okay, so let's just break this down very simply. So literally it's a head and a bait, right? I mean, it's super, super simple here, guys, right? So let's talk about heads, and let's talk about some differences. So probably two of the more popular heads over there are these two guys. So, you know, a Keitech ball head, right, and the Deps Mist jig head. Okay, now on the surface, these are going to look very similar. The Keitech is, of course, going to be tungsten, and the Mist is going to be lead. So the Mist is going to appear to be substantially bigger, but it's really about the same weight, right? So I've got a 16th ounce here. I've got a 2.5 gram here. It's just a little bit bigger than a 16th ounce. So here is basically the difference between the different styles of heads. And it doesn't matter what head you guys are using. I mean, use whatever head you like to use. Traditionally speaking, when you're using a ball head style jig head, right? The idea by using a ball head with a swim bait is that because the ball head is round and it doesn't really have like a true keel, it doesn't really have like a true point that is pulling that bait through the water in a straight way, what happens is because it's kind of off centered, it wobbles left and right, right? So as you're pulling it, that kind of circle is constantly kind of fighting to be in center, and it's giving the bait just a little bit of side rotation as it moves through. So it just enhances the action a little bit more on a ball head than it does on just a traditional swim bait head, right? And that's why you would switch to something like a ball head. Now, if you use a jig head like the Keitech here, you'll notice that the hook eye is basically just straight up. Right, it's going to be similar to like what a traditional jig type eye would be, okay? And this is going to be for more of a straight swim retrieve, right? So you're basically going to cast it out and just kind of wind it in. And it's just going to kind of come in and have those little tight little wobbles that we're talking about. You can't really add any action to it because of where the line tie is. So the action is the action, right? It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, okay? So this would be a great style head for using a bait like an HP Shadtail, right? So this is a very popular style bait for a Biwa Rig, just more of like a paddle tail worm is what we're looking at here. You could use a swim bait, right? You could use a Volop swimmer, a Dolive shad, a Hazardong shad. You could use anything on this. But this is going to be more of a traditional style because, again, when you're trying to imitate a small bait fish, right? Whether it's a wakasagi that they're imitating in Japan, whether it's a small shad, a bass fry, whatever, if you look at those fish in the water, their movements are ultra tight, right? Those little bait fish aren't doing, you know, these big wide tail kicks or all this crazy stuff. So if there is just a plethora of the real thing out there, right, they're gonna know that this crazy tail wag is not right. Right, really easy to ignore it. So this is where some type of paddle tail worm really comes into play because instead of this being this big wide tail kick, it's a very subtle little tail kick just at the end there, and the body just has that little bit of body roll, so it just looks real natural and real tight, right? So again, this is a great option to throw on that little Keitech, something like this. Another one that would be good would be like the bottom Up Frish. Okay, this would be another great option because, again, it's got that little paddle tail on the backside. You could also even go with something like an Issei lyre minnow. So this is more of a wedge tail, less of a paddle, but same basic kind of idea that it's going to have a very, very subtle little kick to it. Okay, now the other style of head would be something like this. This would be the Mist jig head. Okay. This is a very, very popular one. That's the one that I was holding up earlier. Now, the difference between this is you'll notice that the line tie is actually kind of turned, right? So it's basically turned. So what this does is this allows, as you shake your rod tip, this causes that head to have more side-to-side roll. So it's going to give you more exaggerated side-to-side movement that allows you to fish a bait that has less tail kick to have some action now, right? So again, you could use a little bait like the Frish. Okay, this is kind of like a little hybrid. You can see that paddle tail is real small, but this is the type of head that is incredibly popular for more of a stick bait. Okay, so Yamamoto makes one. Deps, of course, makes the Deathadder, which is a very popular bait for this style as well. OSP makes the Dolive Stick. You could use the Sakamata shad or a fluke style bait like this is also a great option. OSP even makes a complete non-salt version specifically for the Biwa Rig so that the bait isn't too heavily salted, so it's not pulling that real lightweight jig head down, right? It's allowing the bait to be more buoyant, so as it moves, it's allowing that tail to kind of flap back and forth. So if you took a bait like this and you just put on that Keitech head and cast it and swim it, it's basically just swimming. It's not doing anything. But you can put it on that midst head and you can use your rod to manipulate, and just kind of by shaking it very gently, it's causing that ball head to move side to side, and it's giving that worm just a little bit of movement side to side. It's making it look like a fish swimming through the water, right? So there you go. 2 different head styles depending on what you want to do. If you want to be in control and add some excitement to it, go with a head like the midst where the eye is tied a little bit more sideways on it. If you want to just cast it and swim it, you can go with more of a traditional head style like this. It's basically got the straight vertical eye on there. Baits, we covered. Rod, very simply, you are not going to have a lot of weight on this, right? So again, it's a lighter sized head. Now, if you guys want to fish a heavier head and put it in deeper water, you can do all these same things. So if you wanted to take a head like this and go to like a 1/4 ounce, right, and fish it out a little bit deeper, great, do it. They'll smoke it. But the idea behind the actual Biwa Rig is to fish this real high, real shallow, places where tiny little bait would tend to exist, right, in reality, in the real world, and that's what makes this so good. Now, by the time you add a bait to it, if this is a 16th ounce head and I put this bait on there, it's probably an 1/8 ounce, maybe 3/16 at the heaviest, right? So you're gonna want a rod that has a pretty whippy tip to it to really load and cast that rod. This is where a rod like the 7/60s, you know, Destroyer Flissa, something like that, would really be critical. If you don't have that, something in like a medium light that's got a really whippy tip, like a whip snake or something like that, would be great. I throw mine on the Silver Shadow. This is a rod that I use very, very rarely for throwing like smaller jerkbaits. I'm not really a big jerkbait fan with my spinning rod, but it's really designed for throwing a jerkbait. So it has that nice kind of whippy tip. That's all you're looking for, right? You need some kind of whippy tip that this will load and be able to cast that out there. Whatever reel suits you. You guys all know that I'm an Exist fan, so, but whatever you like, super light braid here. So this is where you're gonna wanna go down to like a 10-pound or an 8-pound braid. The lightest braid you can get away with, the lightest leader that you can stand getting away with, unless you're trying to keep it up higher. So if you guys are fishing at night, which is how this rig was designed to be fished, and you're gonna be fishing really shallow water, it won't hurt to bump that leader to 10 or 12 pound, even though your braid is super light. You want your braid to be light so it has the castability. Use the leader length to match the conditions of the water. If you guys are fishing for fish that are feeding on fry and they're being really, really picky, then you're gonna wanna go down to like 4 pound or 5 pound on this, and this is just a very finesse approach. But again, if you can get away with the heavier line, knock yourself out. The heavier line will just help keep your bait lifted in the water column, and it'll give you more opportunity to fish it a little bit slower because that line is lifting it just a touch up. All right, guys, so that's it. I mean, it's a very, very simple rig. It's very easy. It's not really anything like revolutionary. This is just small little tweaks and different mindset on how to use it. But you are going to see more and more baits coming down the pipe designed for this technique. So hopefully this will help as we mention the Biwa Rig. It'll give some insight as to what it is we're talking about. Maybe this is something you guys haven't been doing that you can implement and catch some fish and give it a stab, right? So if you have any questions on what we covered, drop it down below. Of course, there's a million different ways you can do this, and there's gonna be different retrieves, different rod movements, different baits. If it's catching fish, it's right? So go for it, experiment. If you guys have experience that has been working for you, drop it down below too, and let's collectively share. Jeff will leave links to the products if you want to check any of them out. You can. Jeff?
Well,
thank you for the conversation. Yes.
Let me add one thing.
Okay, I would love this.
So I know we were talking about this as the Biwa Rig, and it's for Wakasagi on Lake Biwa, wintertime, nighttime, like. But don't be discouraged, because how the Wakasagi spawn during the winter, our Shad spawn. The Shad will spawn at night. And so it's basically exactly something like that. So during the Shad spawn, the Shad will move up shallow at night, early morning. So this is a perfect time to fish the Biwa Rig. So don't think like, oh, it's only made for Biwa, and like, no, like think of the applications that it can be used here to catch fish. So
that's a great point. And you know, if you live in the northern part of our country, like around the Great Lakes, they'll have other bait fish runs that'll happen at night. Smelt runs, grunion, right? So there's other bait fish runs that will happen where those fish migrate at night into that shallow water, and this is a great way to catch them, right? So, you know, try it, use it. You know, maybe it opens up a whole new world that you didn't think of doing, especially when we start talking about the night application for this as well. So give it a shot. If you guys have any questions, holler at us. As always, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the business on behalf of myself and everybody here. Thank you guys. We will see you very soon on the next episode. So peace, good luck, be well.